It wasn't white. That's the first thing I want you to understand. Because every time I try to describe what I saw, my brain reaches for the word light and then stops. Because that word isn't right either. It was more like the substance that light is made from, before it becomes light. If you could strip away every photon and what was left behind was still somehow illuminating everything, that's closer to it. It had texture. It had weight in a way that didn't press down on you, but pressed through you. It moved, not like wind, more like it was breathing. And the longer I stayed inside it, the more I understood that I wasn't looking at something. I was inside something that was aware of me. That is where I was for 8 days while my body lay in a hospital bed with machines doing everything my brain had stopped telling it to do. My name is Sarah Colton. I'm 53 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And in the spring of 2019, I was declared brain dead following a massive hemorrhagic stroke that ruptured an aneurysm my doctors later told me had been silently waiting in the back of my head for probably 20 years. If you're new here, please subscribe. What I'm about to share is not something I say lightly, and it's not something I've said easily. It took me 4 years to talk about this publicly. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if you've ever sat at the bedside of someone in a coma, or if you've ever been told that someone you love is gone, still breathing, still warm, but gone, I need you to drop a comment below before this video is over, because what I was shown changes everything about what that moment actually means. Everything. I woke up on the 8th day. That's not the beginning of the story, but it is the anchor, the moment everything else loops back to. The morning of the 8th day, my daughter was in the room with my husband. She told me later that she had stopped sleeping at the hospital by that point. She was home when her phone rang. She says the nurse's voice sounded strange. Not sad, strange, like something the nurse didn't quite have the vocabulary for. When she got there, I was sitting up in the bed, not being helped to sit up, sitting up, oriented, asking for water. The neurologist who had signed my brain death declaration the previous Tuesday came in that morning and spent 2 hours running tests he kept having to stop and restart because the results made no medical sense. My reflexes were not just present, they were normal. My pupils were reactive. My language processing was intact. The brain damage that had shown on the scans, the hemorrhage that should have left me either permanently vegetative or dead, had, in his words, resolved in a way he had never seen and could not explain. He stood at my bedside, and I remember watching his face while he read the latest scan results on his tablet, and I thought, he's looking for a medical word to put around what he's seeing, and there isn't one. I had one, but it wasn't medical. The first physical evidence that something had happened to my body wasn't visible in any scan. It was in my hands. My husband noticed it before the doctors did. He was holding my hand on the second day after I woke up, and he looked down and said, "Your fingers are different." The tips of my fingers, particularly on my right hand, had a faint discoloration, almost like a mild burn, but with no heat and no blistering. Not painful, just there. My cardiologist looked at it and couldn't explain it. A dermatologist who examined me 6 weeks later described it as contact depigmentation of unclear etiology. I know what touched them. There's also this. In the 8 days I was brain dead, I lost no muscle mass. This is documented in my medical records. Patients in prolonged unconscious states atrophy. It is automatic. The body begins consuming itself. I should have been physically diminished when I woke up. I wasn't. My physical therapist, who had been brought in to assess me for what everyone assumed would be a long rehabilitation, walked into the room with a clipboard and walked out 20 minutes later without writing a single thing down. She told my husband in the hallway that there was nothing for her to do. That detail matters for what I'm about to tell you, because what I experienced in those 8 days was not passive. It was not like sleep. It was not like floating in a dark room. My body wasn't diminished because wherever I was completely present. I was more present in those 8 days than I have been in any 8 days of my life since. Let me take you back to the beginning of it. I remember the aneurysm rupturing. I was in the kitchen. I was making coffee. There was a sound inside my head, not a bang, more like a deep, low vibration, like a string on a bass guitar plucked one final time. And then I wasn't in the kitchen anymore. I want to be very precise about what came next, because this is where I lose people, and I understand why. I am a retired registered nurse. I spent 22 years in a clinical setting. I am not someone who reaches for supernatural explanations when a physical one is available. I am trained to observe, to document, and to be suspicious of my own perceptions. So when I tell you that I left my body, I am telling you that I watched the kitchen from a position near the ceiling and watched myself fall and watched my husband run in from the other room. I am not giving you a spiritual metaphor. I am giving you an observation. I watched him call 911. I watched him hold my head up off the tile. I watched the exact moment the operator told him to stop trying to hold me and let me lie flat. And I watched him struggle to do that, to let go. And I remember thinking from wherever I was, it's okay. I didn't know yet that it wasn't okay. I didn't know yet how long I was about to be gone. The transit, that's the word I use for what came between leaving the kitchen and arriving in the light, was faster than thought. There was a moment of compression, like everything narrowed to a single point. And then there was expansion. And then there was the light. And I already told you that light is the wrong word, but I'll keep using it because language is all I have. The light had a direction, not a source, a direction. It was coming from somewhere I understood I was being moved toward, and that movement felt purposeful. It felt invited. That's the only way I can say it. I felt like I had been invited somewhere, and the invitation had been extended with a warmth that I can only describe as recognition. Like whatever was at the center of that light already knew exactly who I was. I had been a church-going woman most of my life. I believed in God in the way that most people who grow up in the South believe in God. It was familiar. It was present. It was not something I examined very closely. I had not spent significant time thinking about whether Jesus was literally real or figuratively real or somewhere in between. I believed in the way you believe in a language you were raised speaking. You don't think about whether it's true. It's just what words are. What I encountered in that light was not a concept. It was not a feeling. It was a person. He did not have a body the way I understood bodies, but he had a presence that was more specific, more particular, more individual than any human presence I have ever stood next to. He was unmistakably himself. And the moment I was in his presence, I knew exactly who he was, in the same way that you know your own name, not because you've been told, but because it's yours. He didn't speak first. He let me look. And I looked at him for what felt like a very long time. And what I felt was not fear, and not awe, and not smallness. What I felt was the specific peace of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time and has just been allowed to set it down. Every grief I had ever held, every shame, everything I had not said, every person I had failed, all of it was present in that moment. I didn't get to hide any of it, and none of it was condemned. All of it was known, and all of it was held. Then he showed me something. He showed it to me without words, the way you would show someone a room by simply opening a door. I understood what I was seeing rather than being told what to see. I saw every person in the world who was in a coma at that moment. I don't know how to account for the scale of it. It wasn't like watching television. It was like being given a perception that was not limited by the angle of my vision. I could see, I can't say all of them at once because that doesn't capture it. I could see each one completely. Each one in their bed or their chair or wherever they were, surrounded by their people or alone, with machines or without. And every single one of them was somewhere else. Every single one. Not asleep, not gone, somewhere else, as present and as real as I was in that light. Some of them were in conversations I was not permitted to hear. Some of them were being shown things. Some of them were in a kind of waiting, not painful, not confused, but deliberate. Like they were in between a question and its answer. Like whatever was happening required the specific time it was taking. The ones whose families were gathered at their bedside, I could see the families on one side and the person on the other side, and I understood that there was a thread between them, not severed, not even frayed, still completely connected, still completely warm. The families who were crying didn't know they were being heard. The person on the other side of that threshold could hear every word, could feel every hand, not through the body wasn't receiving it, but directly, without the body as an intermediary. That's the thing he wanted me to understand. That's what the showing was for. The threshold is not a wall, it is a membrane, and everything that passes through it arrives. When he finally spoke, and I say spoke, but what I mean is that understanding entered me the way water enters a cloth. He said something that I have been trying to carry accurately for 6 years now. He said, "Tell them not to stop talking." That was the invitation. Not just to understand what I had seen, but to carry it back. To be the person who says it out loud so that whoever needs to hear it can hear it. He invited me to be the one who walks back through the door and leaves it propped open. I didn't want to go. That's the part I have the most trouble saying in public. Not because it sounds strange. Everyone who has had this kind of experience says they didn't want to return. People expect that. What I have trouble saying is how specific the not wanting was. It wasn't that I was afraid of death or attached to my life. It was that I understood in that place what I actually was. I understood myself at the level of what I am made from, and I knew, not believed, knew, that what I am made from does not end. And the idea of going back into a form that was going to spend 50 more years believing it might end, struggling with that belief, living inside that particular anxiety, I didn't want that. I wanted to stay where I knew. He was patient with this, more patient than I deserved. He didn't argue. He didn't override me. He waited. And eventually I said yes. Not because I was told to, because I understood that the thread was mine too, that my people on the other side of the membrane could hear me, that my daughter sitting in a hospital waiting room with a cold cup of coffee in her hand was still connected to me by something that could not be cut, and that she needed me to come back and tell her. Not just her, all of you. The thing the experience gave me, and this is something I didn't expect, something nobody tells you about when they talk about near-death experiences, is a practice, a way of being in the world that I did not have before. I came back knowing that everything I send out goes somewhere. Every word I say to someone I love, it goes. Every moment I choose to stay instead of leave, to hold on instead of pull back, to speak instead of go quiet, it goes. The threshold is a membrane in both directions. What the living send toward the almost gone arrives. And what I carried back from the other side also goes into every conversation, into every room I sit in, into every person I have the chance to look at like I know what they're actually made of. The method, if I had to describe it, is presence without condition. being with someone fully, without the noise of your own fear about losing them. The coma patient in the hospital bed doesn't need your performance of grief. They need you to sit next to them and talk to them like they're there, because they are there. They are completely there. Your words reach them at a frequency their body isn't blocking. So speak. The obstacle, and I won't pretend this part is small, is that the world teaches you to believe what you can measure. My neurologist, who I respect enormously, has never once in our follow-up appointments been able to say the word miracle to me. He says remarkable recovery. He says atypical presentation. He says outside our current understanding. What he cannot say is the thing the evidence in front of him is pointing toward, because the language of his training doesn't have a room for it. That was my obstacle too. I was a nurse. I know what brain dead means. I know what the declaration process requires. I know how many steps they go through before they say those words. And I woke up from brain dead. And I had to spend a long time deciding whether I was going to trust what I knew or trust what I had been trained to measure. Trusting what I knew was the perseverance. Saying it out loud to my daughter, watching her face change. Saying it to my pastor, and then to a grief counselor who specialized in NDEs, and then slowly to a wider room. Every time I said it and someone looked at me like I was choosing to believe a beautiful lie, I had to decide again. Every time someone needed a medical explanation I couldn't give them. Every time the voice in my own head said, "You were just deprived of oxygen and your neurons were firing randomly, and this is what that looks like." Every time. I kept saying it anyway, because he asked me to. Now I need to speak directly to you. Not the you that's watching this video right now, comfortable and skeptical and alive in every obvious way. The you that's going to be in a bed somewhere at some point. The you whose family is going to be making decisions in a hallway while you are somewhere else entirely. The you who might, if they haven't been told, be afraid of that moment. The you who has sat with the dying and not known what to say and said nothing. I want to write you a letter right now. When you get there, you will not be alone. The light you will move toward is not nothing. It is the most specific, most personal, most loving thing you have ever encountered. And it already knows your name. And it has known your name longer than you have been alive. You will not be judged in the way you have been taught to fear. You will be known, completely known. And you will discover that being completely known and being completely loved are, in that place, the same thing. The people sitting at your bedside can hear you noticing that they're there. Their voices reach you. Their hands reach you. You are not cut off from them. You are only on the other side of a membrane, and the membrane lets everything through that matters. And if they are the ones reading this, if you are the one sitting next to someone who hasn't woken up yet, please keep talking. Talk like you know they're listening, because they are. Say what you would have said if you'd had more time. Say it now. It's not too late. From where they are, the timing is not what you think it is. They have time. They are in it. They are held. And whatever you believe right now, whatever framework you're carrying this inside of, I am not asking you to change it. I am only asking you to consider that the threshold is not the end. I was shown this by someone who showed it to me with a patience and a specificity that I have not been able to dismiss in 6 years of trying. I am a retired nurse. I read peer-reviewed literature. I understand the neuroscience of near-death experiences, and I've read the studies and I've thought about them carefully. And I'm still here telling you what I saw was real, what I carried back was real. And the invitation he extended to me to come back and say it, I am still honoring. That's why I made this video. If this reached someone who needed it today, If you are sitting next to someone in a coma, if you are grieving someone who didn't come back, if you are afraid of what's waiting for you, please let me know in the comments. I read every one. I answer when I can. And if you're new here, subscribe. I don't post for quantity. I post when I have something real to say. This is a real thing. Stay with me for the next one. Talk to them. They can hear you. I promise you, they can hear you.